Yeah, I messed up. Okay, cool. That's working again. God damn it. Every time I stream, I end up messing up. So, very fun. We'll wait for people to jump back in. Unfortunate. You know what? We're going to do this more quickly because I feel like the last one was taking forever and we weren't actually accomplishing that much. I almost died. Yikes. Okay. You know what? I could take the last one, I could re-edit it, and then I could play it back on live. So that's what we'll do. We'll just continue. And yeah, that'll be the method. So where is this? I need all this data. Enable editing. Actually, that is completely the wrong data. What the hell? Where is this? Actually, let me do it without enabling editing. Good. We'll copy that. Copy this. Excellent. And of course, I don't copy the headers. So we're going to be using the same method as before. Oh, we need 12 months. Yeah. Total spent over 12 months. We'll also do the average. And we'll delete this information. Resize all of that. And we will 12 months divided by daily income. And then we'll pull an average. And we'll do if error 0. Excellent. And then we'll move this here equals sort by 2 false. And this is why we removed the rating alliances. Samurai removed and ARG removed. And what else do we want to remove? You know what? Because we're doing a fresh start, I'm going to reset most of these. And we're going to make sort of more snap decisions based on these numbers and the data that I know. But a lot of them will be the same. So if you watch the last stream, you'll have a decent understanding. Sacrum we're going to remove as well because I don't know what they are. And I don't think they're even on the list. Sacrum, there will be a rating alliance too. And same with Requiem. Okay. Knights Templar, Put them very high up. KT. Competent. I don't think they're like God tier or anything. I think there are some flaws with the economic system. Guardian. Also competent. Where are they? Where the hell is Guardian? So confusing. Competent. Slightly less so than KT, but still very efficient. I think their bank is actually larger than KT, so we'll rank them higher. The Immortals. They have a weird flag now. Stable, at the top of stable. TFP will put below them. I think TFP's average is lower. The fighting passive is 190 to the Immortals 280, but the Immortals has been going through a year of peace, which we can give them some credit for, but ultimately that speaks more to their political acumen than it does their economic. So yeah, we'll rank them as stable, and I think they're paying the price for that year of peace now, because they're slightly less competent and they've lost way more than they perhaps might have if they'd fought more wars. What about Golden Horde is ranked very highly. We'll put Akatsuki incompetent as well, and we'll put Golden Horde incompetent as well. Valinor is a Rose Alliance, which I don't think is even on this, so we want to include them. Black Knights has performed shockingly well this year, so I would also put them incompetent. Event Horizon is more than competent, because they are spending huge chunks of their alliance bank, and I think that's in part because of like political and merge decisions, but it's also because of like decent efficiency. Singularity we'll put high as well. I would put them above Event Horizon, just because I've spoken to both sort of the economic personalities from both alliances, and Singularity is way more, I would say, intelligent than Event Horizon, but they are playing with more systemic disadvantages. So Event Horizon is like the product of two alliances that have been around for a lot longer, so they have larger banks and so forth. And I think in terms of loans, they're both taking loans, I would presume. Cult of Cthulhu. Hyung Shing. These guys are weird, but I think they've also been at peace for like a year, so I wouldn't rank them that highly, I guess. I'd put them in stable next to like TI, because those are political decisions, not primarily economic ones. Like, they're good in the sense that you could probably join them and grow more than most alliances. Yeah, it just doesn't speak to any economic understanding of the game. I would also imagine that Cult of Cthulhu and stuff doesn't have a huge bank. Yeah, they're just at peace and they're spending what they have, and they're not super efficient. FSO's like turned around a lot, so I'd put them in stable. UPN we'll put in stable. Brotherhood, wow, that's news to me. I did not know they were even remotely decent. We'll put them, I know their economic policies are still trash though, so we'll put them at the very top of incompetent. I think that's just a lot of peace. United Umar, their tiering is kind of impressive. I don't think they're high tax, which is a point against them. High tax is great for most alliances. Cool. And what else are we looking for? Enterprise, and where the hell is the rest of them? I've completely lost the training alliances, and here they are. These other alliances don't exist, so we will skip them. I don't know what this is. Anarchy. This is LOD. I should rank LOD before I forget where they are. Legion of Dawn, they're very low on the list. 160 days of growth out of 365. So they wasted 200 days in the past year. And they have a huge bank too. That's kind of unjustifiable. So yeah, irrelevant, I would say. Man, I love frogs and high table. This feels wrong because I know that like the frogs have been pretty consistent with their growth. Like this, they're not that bad. So I don't know why they were so close to high table, because high table is probably the most incompetent economic alliance the most incompetent in terms of like the smaller alliances that I've encountered in terms of economics. Militarily, I think they're fine. Politically, I think they're fine, but their economics, it's bad to the point of parity. Even in like singularity sphere, I think I joked that I joked about their economic numbers, and I think I put it at like 2 or 3 billion a month. And at the time, they were spending I think about 500 million a month. That was how bad it was. And this is while everyone else in the sphere was spending at least like 20 bill plus. So they've turned things around recently, I think. Their numbers, like over time, were atrocious. I'm gonna check another sheet. High table, high table, high table. Where are they? Here we go. So yeah, it seems like they've turned things around in the past few months. Yep. Cool. So congrats to them for that. I guess, because we're looking at things now and not before, I guess we can rank them higher. We'll put them just below these guys, because this still isn't like a great result, but it is better than nothing. Other frogs on here? If you talk to the head of economics for the frogs versus Brotherhood Family, for a fact, the frogs are smarter. I would say for a fact their cities are probably more efficient. Yeah, I think these guys are overrepresented. Like, oh, they're ranked too highly. They're overestimated. Man, just on Mortalis. They've had a pretty rough year, actually. Like, they've been rated a lot. So I kind of want to rank them much higher. But have they been at war though, beyond just raids? They lost half of their alliance too, I think. Tricky. I think they're either at the top of incompetent or they're at the bottom of stable. We'll put them at the bottom of the top of incompetent. Grumpy. So I don't know if I said it on this stream or the other one. If you go to 12 months and you look at Grumpy and Eclipse, then Eclipse is way outpacing Grumpy, and they will be the new Whale Alliance at like City 50. I can guarantee that. But in the meantime, then Grumpy is performing pretty well. They've lost a few wars. They bounce back reasonably fast. They have a huge bank, but it's all member deposits. They have no taxes. Their loan system is kind of messed up. I would rank them wherever they are. Did I already rank them? Oh, I did. Okay, yeah, I would rank them... Yeah, competent. Reasonably competent. Actually, looking at this data... Actually, I'm going to change my mind. I think from competent to stable, I think that's justifiable. Global Alliance and Treaty Organization. They are... Where are they? Did they change their flag? No, they haven't. Okay. You would expect them to be worse than they are. So... Are they still beating UPN? I don't think they are, actually. But they have, I think, way less money than UPN. Okay, we'll rank them lower. What about Foundation? Foundation is really new, so that's probably a really good statistic for them. I'll put them in stable, maybe even... Oh no, actually they aren't entirely new. This would be factoring in their pre-rebrand names as well. Well, yeah, we'll put them at the bottom of stable. Gallo Glass is a TFP prod that I don't think has ever seen war. We'll put them at the bottom of... Well, we'll put them at the top of incompetent. Their tiering is a mess. They have like City 40s and like City 10s. Church of Adam, right in the bottom. Terrible. They could almost be excused for how little they spend on cities because of, like, there's no point spending money on like Wales at that tier, right? Because like City 50, a City 50 nation and a City 10 nation, City 10 and City 50 produce the same amount of money, but City 50 costs way more money than City 10. So for an alliance like Church of Adam, it actually pays for them to loan most of their money to their allies until, like, eventually they claim it back and spend a ton of it. But this would kind of indicate that if they are loaning, they haven't claimed any of their loans for at least a year, which is a bad sign. I think they're also just kind of inefficient. They've been around for a long time. They should have a huge bank. They should be doing way better than this. And they won their last war. Like, this is so stupid. Yeah, so they deserve incompetent. More than Legion of Dawn, even. The Royal Alba Charter, are they on this? This is it. OWR, Order of the White Rose. Are they rebranded? I would put them in stable. They know how to grow. I don't think they've been around for a year. No, I think they might have reformed last year, but they didn't get most of their members for a while. What about Oblivion? Oblivion, we will put... Where is Oblivion? They have a weird cat. There we go. Top of stable. They punch above their weight. Even if their stats here aren't fantastic, I think it's because most of their money is being put into war chest or loans. Probably war chest more than anything else. Their war chest is obscene. Alliance name, I don't know what this is, so we're going to remove it. I can't remove it, whatever. Panem, bad stats, and I don't really know much about them, but I don't think it's worse than either of these. The Knights Radiant, where are they? So they should be a leading alliance. They were a leading alliance for a very long time. Their bank is still insane. However, they've been losing a lot of wars. They're probably, if you compare their econ head and their sort of econ practices against most alliances in this game, they would do better than most. But against their peers, Singularity, Event Horizon, Rose, the Syndicate, Grumpy, they are almost not a competitor at this point. So we'll put them in the bottom of competent because they obviously know how to grow, but they're just finding it very difficult at the moment, and they aren't really keeping up with their rivals in terms of practices, and also just a general effort, I guess. World Task Force, bottom of the barrel, irrelevant. Not only are their stats terrible, but they should have way better stats. They haven't really lost a war, like truly lost a war, I think in like 3 or 4 years. Like you could argue they lost in what's it called, December, but that loss lasted for a week, single week, and before that, then yeah, it was multiple years of peace. They fought Camelot for a bit, but I mean, most of their whales were untouched. So, like the reason they lost that war so decisively was that the whales refused to give anything to their smaller nations, or to their middle range nations. So, like, they have a ton of money to spare. They're just not using it. They're not even loaning, I don't think. So this is just a waste. And they're allied to Church of Adam, which does not help my opinion of either alliance. The Remnant. I think that's what these guys are. Am I wrong? TKR, I think. I'm going to the... Oh, actually, I will do it via the alliance list. If it loads. Eventually. I know Brotherhood Family should not be C tier, but at the same time, their numbers kind of speak for themselves. Where's the Remnant? Am I underestimating them? Wait, no, they can't be top 50, because if they were... Did they oh no, they renamed to the house. That's what I'm thinking of. What? But sure it was house. I'm so confused. Oh, they changed their flag to a black one. Okay, I don't know these people. Apparently they're a protectorate of Camelot, but I don't know them. So, okay. Actually, but this is house thing. This is the alliance Kev made. I think I need to go to TKR's page, because I know they're a TKR protectorate. Or actually, no, why am I doing that? 120. The treaty web loads way faster than their page, because their page is mostly like images. Is it Lego City? They're gonna get this video demonetized, or not demonetized because I'm not monetized, but what's it called? Deprioritized. That's what I mean. Demon Spawn. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Oh no, it does. J-Dizzle. Okay. I think that's what this flag is. They probably know how to grow, but I haven't seen anything special out of them. I kind of imagine they'll just be very stable. Yeah, so we'll just put them at the bottom of stable. Like, I don't think we're going to see anything special, but I also don't think we're going to see anything bad. And they just lost a war, so we can't really judge them. Freeman is a raiding alliance, so I will put them... do we want to just rank the raiding alliances low or high? Because... we could look at rating stats. I guess we kind of have to. Or no, actually, we'll put them in their own category. Because even like the most competent raiding alliance, you're not going to be growing as fast. Or at least not as large. Unless you are like an extreme exception. And ARG. I think Samurai is better than Freeman, but ARG is like the iconic raiding alliance, so we'll rank them like that. Oh wait, that's what I was talking about earlier. When I was mentioning Grumpy's stats earlier, I was actually doing it to justify putting Eclipse here and not put Grumpy there. That's funny. But actually I wouldn't change where they are at, so whatever. Eclipse will rank higher because one, their politics is very on point. They get they get a long time at peace, and they usually win their wars. And then beyond that, I think there's a very high efficiency among their nations. I think they produce like almost the most food in the game, aside from Grumpy. So that's another point in their favor. Do we want to put Syndicate? I would rank Syndicate higher because one, they spend slightly more money than Eclipse. Two, they've been running city circles since before Eclipse existed. And yeah, I think they also just have a huge share of like the game's wealth. Like they have a massive alliance bank of like 600 bill plus, or at the very minimum, I think 500 billion plus. The problem with Syndicate is that most of their money, to my understanding, is member deposits. And so when those members leave, or when those members need to rebuild after wars and stuff, their bank becomes very, very fragile, and they lose a lot of that. So, oh, and they also just sit on huge amounts of money, which they can't spend it in any way. I know there was a point in time when Syndicate tried to spend member deposits, and the members sort of rebelled. So that might have changed, and they might now be spending member deposits to within a certain tolerance. Like real life banks, they can loan out money like from people's deposits, in a sense. So yeah, I think that's probably what Syndicate's doing now, but I don't know for sure. So we'll put them at number 2, and Rose will be number 1. They have the highest revenue. I believe they have the biggest bank. They still take loans for growing. So they have amazing economic practices. Yeah, they print money. They are the reason why everyone's so obsessed with growth. Everyone wants to match Rose and accomplish what they are. Because Rose is so large at this point, it is like a sphere unto itself. And for a while there it was. Like they couldn't ally anyone because anyone they allied would make their sphere too large. So yeah, I would put them above Syndicate. However, their lead over other alliances, I think, has diminished over time. I think at one point there was reasonable odds that they would be twice as large as their nearest competitor, and now that is narrowed, and they're only like 10 or 20% stronger than Syndicate and Eclipse. So yeah, I would put them in leading, and Legion will put in stable ahead of UPN and FSO. I don't want to put them above TFP. I've spoken to both alliances occasionally, and whenever I've found TFP to be slightly more... They just have more game knowledge, I guess. So yeah. House Stark, where are they? Irrelevant. Terrible stats. Awful stats. Completely unjustifiable too, because their bank is massive. Is it worse than Church of Adam? Though, that is the question. 90 days. Where's Church of Adam? 160 days. Look at that. 90 days to 160 days. They are way worse. Yorkshire. I think I'm just going to have to make a tier for alliances I really don't know. Like, I don't know enough about them. The Hyung Shing, I can't pronounce it, company. I think they've just avoided wars. So I'm gonna create a new tier called Avoided Wars. These guys are like a bank and a pirate alliance, so no. Avoided Wars. I think these guys have avoided wars. I might be wrong about that. It's also very low, but I think they're a very new alliance. Where are they on this map? Oh, that's one alliance we needed to find earlier. And is Libertas on this list? Okay. Let's find Libertas. because I know very little about them. And they suck. To no surprise. Put them slightly above. We'll put them above these guys. Empire of the Romans. Are they actually doing well? Oh no. No, they are not. Wow. Those are bad numbers. Have they been at war for most of the year? They've been at war like on and off. Actually, I'm going to check that in like a second. Okay, that's interesting. What's it called? We're going to use metrics and infrastructure or revenue. Yeah, I guess we'll use revenue. Empire of the Romans. Camelot. And we use 365 days. Wow, that will have messed up. Nice. 365 days. So, Coalition 2 is us. That's weird. Where is this? Yeah. This is what I'm looking at, and I'm trying to make sense of it, because this is us, so you can kind of tell when we fought a war. I can't really tell with Empire of the Romans. I think this is a war. I think this might be one. One or two. So they fought 2 wars in that time. Stats didn't really budge. I think they could probably lost this war. I don't know about this one. You know what, we'll be generous. And we'll say they are not as bad as these guys. I think they have significantly fewer advantages than these 3. All of these 3 have alliance banks, and they're like wasting their opportunities, whereas Empire of the Romans, I think it has fewer opportunities. And speaking of alliances that waste opportunities, USN, we'll put them at the top of this terrible quartet. Mayhem, put them at the bottom of like very good, I think. No, TFP did the better than them. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Sword Coast. I want to put Sword Coast in competent because they haven't existed that long, and when I've been looking at like expenditure per month, they've been doing very well. They've been punching above their weight a bit. And they know what they're doing. I think if the only concern I'd have is if they're low tax, which they very well may be. And if they're copying TKR's sort of practices, which would also be kind of dubious. And if they just hug TKR, because I think TKR is losing a lot of wars, that would also be not great. But I don't think they're doing that. Like they signed weaponized assault penguins. So I think they're branching out. Yeah, so I think they're kind of like doing everything TKR is doing, but slightly better. And they're avoiding some of TKR's weaknesses, hopefully. Yar. Yar is doing extremely well. Very safe. They kind of don't fight wars, which means they're like a purely economic alliance. There are things that they could do which would help them more, I would say, that they're not doing. But it's fine, right? They're actually like a better Grumpy, because I think Grumpy spends too much on themselves, whereas Yar spends most of their money on loans, to my understanding. So we're going to put them up here. See, they're at 200 days, but with how much they're loaning, which is more than any other alliance, in terms of like, if you're a member of Grumpy, more of your money is being loaned out than in any other alliance in the game. And that will have huge returns, eventually. So yeah, Yeah, makes sense though. Akatsuki is kind of a bit too high. Yeah, there. What are these guys? Apocalypse Knights. Oh wait, this is Lego City. Okay, that makes sense. Do we have Lego City on this page? I do not. Whatever. Oh wait, no I do. Here they are, they're unstable. Apocalypse Knights, I guess we could put them... 120 days isn't bad. MFRC is around there too. For those like types of alliances, I wouldn't say it's terrible, but it's also just not good. So at the very bottom of incompetent, I guess. Dark Brotherhood. 186. I think they were helped by Sketchy, like last year, and I think they're helped by Toxic now. So I feel like there's important individuals that are pushing them ahead, but that also doesn't detract from them, right? Just because like one or two people are driving most of their success doesn't diminish the fact that they have those people in those roles. So yeah, stable. I'd probably even put them nearer the top of stable, because their members are very safe investments. Their members basically all come from like the same country and like the same like social groups, so they're very safe investments. What are these guys? Oh wait, we're gonna do Sacrum Imperium Romanum. You know what? It doesn't. I don't even need to look at their numbers, because this is the Federation, and the Federation was once a major alliance with 60 people and a whole bunch of history and a few accomplishments under their belt. And look at it now. It's a shadow of a shadow. Yeah, I would never join this. Not even as a meme. That is a dead alliance. And I think they just avoid wars too. So actually, yeah, wait a minute. I removed them for... Here we go. They have insane stats. 325 days. Which means they were at peace for 95% of the year. I removed them because I thought they were a raiding alliance, because of how absurd that stat was. It's because they literally do not fight. If I was to put this on like 2 years, I think the numbers would be even worse. So yeah, they are number 1 in avoiding wars. Or actually, I guess if we're going best to worst, they should actually be the worst. There. The accurate sort of the worst here. Yugoslavia. What about these guys? 136. Not terrible, not great. I think they're allied to TLM, but they're high tax, I think. So very bottom of incompetent. Where did I put TLM? Trying to find them. They have a weird flag. Most of them do. Did I not rank? Oh, I didn't rank TLM. TLM, they're terrible. The Lost Mines, 63 days. New worst. And then Yugoslavia, yeah, better, bottom of incompetent, but they're better than TLM, which TLM and Yugoslavia were at one point like Yugoslavia was an extension of TLM before they had their merger. So yeah, credit to them for not joining in that merger and for avoiding the chaos that came with it. What are these guys? Some of these alliances, I just don't really know them. Or at least I'm not familiar with their flags, because they're not in the top 50 consistently. Vault Tech. These guys keep tanking color trade blocks, which is not a great sign. They're allied to Event Horizon now, so maybe they're... That's a pretty big change. Because I remember they had like 20 nations at City 10, so I think some nations have gotten larger. That kind of looks tax farmy. Like, that's kind of a bit unusual. 162. We'll put them up there with, I'll put them higher than, what's it called, High Table. We'll put them near the frogs. Gallo, oh no, we did Gallo Glass. What are these guys? Yeah, the Imperium. Wow, they do not make it easy to find these things. Maybe they disbanded. I don't want to just rank something really low, just because I can't find it. But I think I might have to. We'll do a search for the Imperium, because that's what their flag is. The Imperium of Man. One member. They do not deserve to be on this list. We'll put them here. Oh no, we'll create another row for alliances that does not exist. There we go. Name withheld, we'll put in top of incompetent. Pokemons. 78. Yeah, it's not Pokemon. Okay, that's bad, but they are new, so we'll put them in incompetent below these guys, but they're very new. And they have some older members, I think, so they should know what they're doing. Know what this is. Oh, that's Yorkshire. Okay. What are these guys? Terrible stats. Very old alliance, and it's led by Diomedes. That tells me everything I need to know, and they are above these guys, but really, really low. They do not have the systemic advantages these guys have, but they are still terrible. Absolutely terrible. And they will also be avoiding wars as much as possible. So I feel like I should put them here, even. Actually, I think they'll even avoid more than Antarctica. And they are allied to Gato, who will absolutely let them avoid wars. What about these guys? This weird sword thing. What could the sword mean? I guess we will never know. Yeah, I cannot find these guys. If anyone knows what their name is, like this this white sword, let me know. But I can't find them. R&R disbanded. I don't know what these guys are. Again, yeah, some of these flags are weird. Oh, their alliance name. It's a Yar extension. No, they don't exist. They're just Yar. So Arkham, punch way above their weight. What is this? What is this purple thing? Yeah, I don't know what that is. so we're gonna go with, yeah, does not exist, or we can't find it. Same with this. I don't think I could spot it the first time around, but we'll try once more time. Nope. Nope. Weavenism we'll put in stable. Where was their other where was the other alliance? Oh, this is WAP. This is Weaponized Assault Penguins, which is at 201, so they're doing great. And I would reasonably bet that they have very high efficiency. So we'll put them up there incompetent, and do I want to put Weavenism up there as well? 196. I guess that's true, yeah. So why am I ranking Legion so low if that's the case? Yeah. I will do some reshuffling at the end, just based on personal opinion. I don't know what this is, don't know what this is, don't know what this is. Black Sheep. Nope. That is literally what their name is. Does not come up. They do not exist. Does not exist. And I'll leave my last alliance here. What do other people think I should put them? Oh, I can't move them back into there. Random, whatever. Why is it so zoomed in or what? WTF woke up like 4 months ago though. No, they didn't. WTF did not wake up 4 months ago. They got like 2 people back a year ago. And I mean, we can go to their page just to show you how bad it is. They are still not an alliance. This looks weird, but I would argue this is just them changing their MMR. I don't think their stats have like measurably changed. That does look weird. And the number of City 23s they have. Am I wrong? That's a good question. Okay, we're gonna pull out some stats. We're gonna use some metrics. Have they gained more members? World Task Force. They went from 30 members at the beginning of the year to 46 members. So they are actually improving a bit there. What about revenue? This is a very important one. Revenue has trended upwards from about 400 mil to 800 mil. That is a big difference. What about tanks? Why is this metric not working? We'll check cities as well. Total city count. They went from 1.5 million infrastructure to 2.5 million, and from 800 cities to 1,100. You know what? This has worsened my opinion of WTF in many ways, but it has not worsened my opinion of their economics. So we're going to remove them from irrelevant now, and we're going to place them in... Where are we going to put them? Not incompetent. We'll put them below high table. And my rationale is this. both High Table and World Task Force have sort of turned things around recently, but it's very recent. And with WTF, I know the individual member that has caused that change, and that is specifically Clooney. He's the former leader of Acadia, and he knows what he's doing. So that is absolutely the cause for their sudden change, because that's when he started adopting more of a leadership role, to my understanding. And if I check their page, he's right there. Number one, numero uno. Acadia was more of a mass member alliance. WTF never was. So, yeah, that is 100% the rationale for that. And I don't think I've seen any other changes in their leadership or their alliance in general, or even their political policy. So, like their diplomatic policy. So, yeah, I pin that down to one member, and that one member having influence in that alliance, I wouldn't even argue is a good thing. I would say that that is going to cause them trouble down the road, because, like it or not, people mention IQ, people dismiss IQ. He's an IQ leader, and that's going to cause them a lot of trouble. There are alliances that just will not work with them over that. There are alliances that will burn bridges over that. So I think in terms of economic strength, I agree they'll probably actually move up to stable, maybe even competent at some point, but they're going to pay this price for that. So yeah, that's where I put them. And they will lose wars because of it. And that'll also lower them. So that'll be very interesting to see. And it also depends on him remaining active, I think. And if he can teach a replacement to continue the good economic policy that he's setting up, or if he just forgets and then the alliance collapses after he leaves or goes AFK. Though I mean, maybe he wouldn't go AFK, because like those sorts of members, they've been around for a decade, or in some cases almost 2 decades. So yeah, he might just be like the permanent leader of WTF now. It might even rebrand to Acadia if we give it enough time. Oh wait, no, I was ranking Camelot. I was gonna say, because you distracted me with WTF, which I will admit I was wrong about. I thought they were worse than they are. With Camelot, what do you guys think I should rank them? There's 6 of you in the chat, so I'll let you guys vote, and then I'll add some input. Okay, stable at the bottom in the alliance does not exist category. If the other 4 don't respond, I'll assume they're voting for stable or incompetent, because those are sort of the middling categories. And then I'll just add some opinion to it. Okay, it's been enough time. If they're going to vote, they would have. So, Camelot is an interesting example. And we'll pull up their growth stats. So 205 days out of the year, they've been spending on cities. Now, we can factor in the fact that their alliance bank is probably the smallest in the top 50. Even something like United Amar probably has a bigger bank than Camelot does. And that Camelot, I don't think in any war they've never entered a war with money for rebuild. They've had to find it during the war or after the war through loans. And this is partly because they keep getting raided, and it's also partly because they spend a lot on cities, and that's like a conscious sacrifice. So with that in mind, 205 days is pretty solid, right? They're not far behind Eclipse, Rose, some of these like more competent alliances. They're ahead of alliances like Mayhem, which should actually perform better than Camelot, because they're a smaller alliance, they've had more time at peace, they have a much bigger bank. Like Mayhem, I think, has 60 to 80 billion. That is way more than they need. Significantly more than Camelot by a factor of like 2 to 4 times, if you were going by averages throughout the year. So they're punching above their weight. However, if we just look at city growth, like that's where they're punching above their weight. In terms of overall bank size, they're at the bottom of this list. They're in like F tier. Um, so we got to consider both elements. We can also consider where they're spending. So if you were a larger nation and you joined Camelot, you're probably not going to be growing as fast as most of these other alliances. If you were, however, like a city one, you will grow significantly faster because Camelot and Singularity have way better sort of like boosting programs than any other alliance in the game. And that's a risk, right? They're risking money when they're boosting people. It does what's called Syndicate would never boost in that way. They would look at that as incredibly unwise investing, taking huge risks for no real reason in that case. But yeah, there is a logic to it, and I would put it sort of as high stable. I think that's where I would put it, because I wouldn't put it in terms of competent because their bank is not competent yet. In terms of how they grow people, I think they are also kind of behind the others in the amount of analysis they do. But the risks they take put them above everyone below them. So yeah, that would be my opinion. Does that change your opinion, Turtles? Or would you still rank them, what's it called? In bottom. In does not exist. Because if not, I'll put them in incompetent, at the top of incompetent. Or the bottom of stable. If we only get 2 votes. Okay, I'm going to put them at the bottom of stable because we had 1 vote for stable, 1 vote for, I guess, bottom, but I think that's more of a meme. And I would put them in stable. So, yeah, we'll put them here. And I guess that's also sort of fair to alliances like TFP, which have similar numbers to Camelot, but have a much stronger bank. So, is there anything... Oh, we're going to do some shuffling around. So we mostly looked at numbers, and then we had a bit of input. Now we're going to sort of compare alliances within their sort of tiers, and make more decisions based on sort of policies. So looking at the top lineup, I think this looks pretty good. I don't think I would change this. As for like the second tier, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. The rest of these is more murky. Akatsuki is like a 6-man alliance, so I don't think it's fair to put them next to like BK, which is much larger, and so there's more work involved. And also BK would just have much more money to play with than something like Akat. So Arkham versus BK. I would put Arkham above BK because I think Arkham is more consistent, and they have at their helm one of Politics and War's most famous like bankers and economic personalities. Like their game knowledge is way higher than anyone on this list except for maybe Yar and Syndicate Rose. They're extremely intelligent about the game's economic scene. Sword Coast versus WAP. Sword Coast, I think, is also just more intelligent. They have more game knowledge than WAP, or the weaponized assault penguins. I think WAP is sort of new, and they're a military alliance, so their efficiency, or their economic prowess, we'll say, comes from telling people to be on the right builds and making sure that happens. It doesn't come from knowing like how to trade. It doesn't really come from wise investments or anything else. They've gotten kind of lucky with their politics, I feel. Like they've been allied to very strong alliances because they're skilled militarily and not because like they've been playing the political game super well. So yeah, I would put them below Sword Coast for those reasons, but it's competitive. what's it called? Weabonism is very sort of passive. They have a large bank. They will just continue to grow and sit in the shadow of a bigger alliance until they are like top 5, if they ever become top 5. Legion, very consistent. I kind of don't like that their numbers aren't better because they've been, like Allied to Syndicate, they've been super safe and they have competent people. But yeah, I guess that's fine. TKR, again, if they were just being compared to their peers, irrelevant. They have lost the space race of City 50. Even at City 40, they're not a competitor. But compared to most alliances, they're doing very well. Oblivion, yeah, they're punching way above their weight. Grumpy, feels really weird to put Grumpy here. Like some people I think would rank them way lower. And others way higher. I think it's fine. The Immortals. Yeah, that's about right. Cthulhu. Did I say earlier that they just sort of avoided wars? I think that's accurate. I guess we'll leave them there. Or move them down a few places. Dark Brotherhood. Yeah, that's about right. TFP. TFP probably might even deserve slightly higher than DB. No, there are no taxes, so that's 1 point against them. Mayhem. Yeah, it's fine. These guys, UPN, Gato, Foundation. It feels wrong putting Camelot below OWR. That is like very, very wrong. But whatever. Okay, down to incompetent. Actually, no. Name withheld should not be that low. I'll check the sheet, but like they should not be that low. 131 to UPN's 215. I want to put them higher, but I can't. So yeah, bottom of incompetent. Top of incompetent. I don't know Galaglass that well. Their tiering is super weird compared to Mayhem's. I think this is reasonable. Like, it's just some slight adjustments based on sort of personal opinion, I guess, and a little bit of knowledge of how they work. But there's some alliances here I really don't know much about. I'm pretty confident in this lineup. This makes sense. These have to be like, this video, if you summarized it in 5 minutes, it'd be these 5 alliances suck. and the rest of them exist. So I think this is the final tier list. Does anyone have any criticisms of it? Is there any alliance that you're from, perhaps, that you think is underrepresented? Or what? What's going on? That's weird. I think the live stream might be having issues, so I'm going to check if that's working. Apparently it is. Weird. Seeing your growth stream makes me happy to see our growth from where we were over a year ago. Yeah, no, it's really cool. BK, like, credit to them, has radically transformed. When I started the video, I thought you guys were going to be irrelevant. I thought you were going to be the meme of the video. but you weren't. In fact, you have vastly overperformed. I'm kind of bummed about it because, like, I take pride in the fact that Camelot was outperforming most of the alliances in their tier, and then I look at you guys and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So, yeah, credit to BK. BK, if there was a honorable mentions or alliances that have come the furthest, it's definitely you guys. The WTF also gave me a run for my money. I thought they would still terrible, and apparently the last 4 months has signified a dramatic change. I believe I know why that is, and I don't think that's a credit to them. But yeah, it is what it is. With BK though, I think your change is noticeable as well because WAP, which I think was most of your active and competent members, left, and then a lot of the old guard, I think. Your old guard, Yoso, Lordstrom, and stuff, I don't think they bring much to the Alliance at this point. I think they were ahead of their time in 2015, and like stuff like BK Net was amazing, but I think they've fallen behind in a lot of ways, and or at least they're not as active as they were. And yeah, so it's really like a credit to the new gov, to people like Stratos and like the new lineup. That they've managed to turn the Alliance around so much and accomplish so much. Yeah. So like if WAP and BK were compared in a year, they might actually be peers again. They might be rivals. Whereas when WAP left, a lot of people said, well, WAP is going to be the new major alliance and BK is going to disband or it's going to be irrelevant. So that's dramatic. That's amazing. Congrats to them. What about some other big insights, though? It's unfair. Not unfair. It's unfortunate that we can't rank the pirates relative to the rest, but I don't think it's fair on either group of alliances. I don't think it's fair on the farmers to compare them to pirates because you just have very weird statistics. And I don't think it's really fair to the pirate alliances because when you hit those like higher city counts, the pirate alliances just drop off. Like, that's not to say you can't get to City 40 in a pirate alliance. You can in certain circumstances, but it's very odd. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of players, and pirates hate to hear that because every pirate wants to think they are the best. And I mean, someone has to not be the best for there to be the best. Yeah. I did not predict how bad Church of Adam and House Stark were. I didn't realize how atrocious their growth is. To put it in more easy to understand terms, I guess, if you were to take the average week, right, a quick 7 days of logging into this game, they are only spending 1 day on cities. The other 6 days, they are wasting money on Kino and baseball and loaning it out to members that never pay it back, or whatever else they're doing with their money. Only 1/7 or 1/6 of their money is going towards cities. That is stupid. They do not deserve to have money at that point. They should be like lowering their taxes to 0 and trusting the members to spend it. If that's not already what they're doing, and if that's what they're doing, they need to change that. They need to be just putting them all on 100% tax and saying, like, you guys don't know how to spend your money. We will do it for you. Oh, the sword flag is Blackwater. Okay, we can check that. Blackwater. 74 days. We'll put them above these guys. Not great still. Not fantastic. But at least they're on the list. What about other stats? Actually, while we're here, we could talk about internal affairs, because this was meant to be an economics and internal affairs video. So, if we look at... Oh, damn, we'll have to pull up recruitment statistics. And that'll be That'll be a lot. Okay, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, it's definitely tough, but you guys have turned it around. Um, okay, how are we gonna do this? Recruitment data, the bane of my existence. Okay. Hmm. If only I had Singularity has an amazing sheet for this. I do not. So we're going to be we can't even really use Locutus for it. Do we have on the 1 month we have the membership counts. Okay, here we go. I'm going to remove sphere, and then I'm just going to run through some really... Actually, this is like the whole top 50. That's such a mess. Here. We're going to go with some sort of rapid fire internal affairs stuff. I don't really want to change this because this is kind of an economic one. We could make a second one for internal affairs, I guess. That'd be really long, though. And then we would need to sort of consider combining them. You know what? We won't do any of that. We'll do a simple analysis on which alliances on this page are interesting in their sort of recruitment, right? Which alliances are better at growing people, and also factor in like activity, and which aren't. So looking at the top, then we have something like Rose, which not only has a great economic department, but they're also great in internal affairs. They have like 200 plus members, and we can expect they'll hit like 500 probably by next year or within like the next 2 years, because of how sort of the distribution of players joining the game is. 80% of players at this point are just joining the top 5 alliances, top 5, and they're not really joining anywhere else. And I can probably pull up Locutus recruitment statistics to prove that. Never mind, it's not appearing. I know there's a way to see all the Locutus alerts, but I do not know it. Whatever. Anyway, if you pull up the stats for yourself, you'll find that, yeah, 80% of the people are joining the top 5. Or they're applying to them, and then a very small number is trickling out to the rest. And also that active recruiting, i.e. messaging people to join the official server, is probably one of the best ways to grow. And that's what all the big alliances are doing at this point. They're not relying on automated messages, because automated messages are too common. There's like 3 pages of them. It's not worth it. That said, though, they're also sending out messages to nations that have sort of been around for a week, but haven't joined an alliance, and they're messaging people that have applied to other alliances. So there's, for example, in Camelot server, there is like an Eclipse and a Syndicate and a TKR person, I believe, that they just sit in our channels, and when a new person joins the server to join us, then they will message them and say like, hey, have you really considered this? And that is partly why a huge number of leadership is banned from like Eclipse and I would presume like Singularity, TKR, Rose. That's why a lot of you guys are banned from those servers. If you're wondering if you're like a diplomat of a major alliance and you're like, why am I banned? That is why. So it's kind of interesting because there was a point in time where only the big alliances could recruit because you had to send messages manually to new people. And then when alliance recruitment bots became very common, then it evened the playing field because even small alliances could recruit automatically. And then now it's switching back the other way where automated recruiting is pointless and you have to use like, you have to do it manually or with templated messaging. So yeah, it's swung back in favor of the top alliances, and then it will require innovation and development from smaller alliances to even out that playing field again. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. With Syndicate, while we're here and talking about economics and internal affairs, when you join the Syndicate, then I don't think you have that high taxes, but you're restricted in who you can trade with. So you can't sell resources on the open market for like good value. You have to sell them internally. And then Syndicate will often resell these resources to allies and to on the open market themselves and sort of make a smaller profit. They'll profit off the difference. So if you're a new person, I kind of wouldn't advise Syndicate for like some of those reasons. And I think their city circles are probably also less efficient than high taxes and some other alliances, because your city circle is limited, right? So say all the city 30s are in a city circle. Well, you're limited to those city 30s, and your ROI on a city 30 nation is really low, right? Like city 30 will give you 1 mil for like $1 billion in cost. That is terrible. Whereas if your city circle is for like the whole alliance, which is I think how Rose and some of these other big alliances, like their city circles work, then you will also include like city 10s in that city circle, which yes adds an element of risk because those people can not repay things. But if they do repay it, then the profit is significantly higher, right? And the city circle functions faster. So for those reasons, I think Syndicate is actually, their internal affairs are good, but there are some quirks to their system. Eclipse, I think, is actually underrated if you consider their internal affairs, because one, they're recruiting really, really well, and two, the way their tiering is distributed, you can join as a city 40, city 50, city 10, city 20, city 30, whatever you join as, you have a home in that alliance, and there is no other alliance in the game that has that. If you're a city 50, you have to join Grumpy or Eclipse. If you're city 10 or whatever, then you can't join like Grumpy or what's it called, Arkham or Katsuki or whatever else, right? So they're really good in that they cover everyone in the game, but they're also not particularly strong in the sort of lower tier, but they kind of don't need to be either, because of how uncontested the lower tier is. And there's a huge like lost opportunity for alliances like FSO and Gato and stuff, is that because the lower tier is so uncontested, it means they're going to grow a lot more and they're going to be able to compete in City 30. Good. But it also means that they aren't really going to fight a lot of wars. And so those people, those members that are like City 25 are probably some of the most untested members in the game. And they're also getting there much slower than, say, a normal person in Rose would get to that city count. So the Rose person is actually probably more prepared and more willing to fight wars than, say, a Gato member. And we can kind of see that in stats and stuff across the board. So that provides some insight as well into which alliances are leading and which alliances are more stable. Oh, good comment. I don't know what it is related to, but we will learn together at some point. What else is worth mentioning? Oh, training alliances. So training alliances have actually really fallen out of favor. They used to be very common, like everyone was trying to make one, because we give you a second recruitment message without violating game rules, and it also gave you a second alliance page, and it would raise the average score on the average city count on your main page. So it would give you the perception of competence to your peers, and then it would also give you a bunch of recruiting advantages. However, that's fallen away because new people coming into the game sort of want to join like the 200 member alliances. They don't want to join the 50 ones. And there's also sort of economic advantages to just putting them in the 200 man alliance. Like if, for example, the Immortals has all of their members in the Immortals and they join green, or say Syndicate's color, then Syndicate's going to have a really hard time saying you need to move off the color trade block, Whereas if the Immortals splits into two alliances, they really need to put their small nations on another trade block, because if they're on green, they're leeching from green, right? They're taking more than they're putting in. So trading alliances used to convey a bunch of advantages, and they no longer do. What else is worth mentioning? Oh, activity across the game is also just if you go to data visualization and active in the last 3 days, 4,900. It's significantly lower than what it was a few years ago. But also, if you just check in like how many of these people are talking every day on like news servers and community servers and even internally in their own alliances, it is way, 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 way less. This doesn't look like a big difference, but you can feel this difference in every server in the game. And so the alliances that sort of have avoided this or have overcome it or are still active, at least internally, are very interesting and notable. So alliances like Rose, Syndicate, still very active, still very competent. Alliances like let's see here, Lost Minds, and to an extent like the Immortals, you can feel that people are less active because you see none of them. And that's not just that like they don't want to participate in those discussions, it's just that like it's also that they aren't invested. They have no reason to care. And that's one of the prices you pay for long periods of peace. That alliances like these guys that avoid wars, or like the Immortals that sort of stays out of wars for a long time, they lose a sense of purpose. They don't know why they're logging in anymore. They don't have a story to participate in. I've always sort of said this, that the most important thing an alliance leader, or even just anyone sort of managing an alliance, can do for that alliance is to give it a story, to give it a reason for them to log in, to participate, to fight the war, to win the war. Because otherwise, like, what's the point? Like, why give your taxes to this alliance? Why show up for this alliance? Like, friendship can take you so far, but if the only reason you're playing the game is because you have a friend in the game, it's not a good game. So yeah, you can tell really easily which alliances have stories and which alliances do not, or which alliances actually derive like entertainment from wars and from events, and which do not. Alliances like WTF, prior to Clooney joining, had no reason to participate in the game. The game was like actively boring, and whenever they were forced to play the game, quote unquote, like they were raided or someone like wanted to buy resources from them, they were adverse to it. They didn't want to participate in it. They just wanted to exist. If that. Whereas like High Table, Camelot, TFP to an extent, Oblivion, Syndicate, these other alliances, you can tell they want to be in the game. Or and if they don't want to be in the game, they want to accomplish something, or they have opinions on things. Like TFP, they went from an alliance that avoided lots of wars to an alliance that has or had grudges. So they would be attacked by an alliance, and then they would want to get revenge, or they wanted to prevent that happening to them again. And so that gave them motivation. Or you have, High Table, which, again, they wanted vengeance in a lot of cases, but also they saw themselves as the conquerors of the lower tier. They wanted to eat up all of the small alliances and unite them. And they have pretty much done that. It's a very easy task, which is kind of funny. I always talk about like how the lower tier is full of sheep, and that one wolf would just devour them all. And it should be no surprise that a lot of the High Table people came from Camelot. And so they came from me saying that, and they were like, that's a good idea, let's try that. And then they took a lot of the Camelot Familia, a lot of our sphere, and most of those alliances don't exist anymore. Most of them are in a High Table. So You can tell which alliances have seen these videos. um, but it worked. It was very effective. What's it called? Oblivion. Oblivion's a great counterexample. Oh, not counterexample, but a different example, because they don't really have a reason to continue playing, right? But they enjoy the wars. Like, the reason they play the game is for the entertainment. And there are plenty of times where, like, Oblivion people will join other alliances or other alliance wars where they're not, like, they're not meant to be participating. They have no stake in it, but they join for the fun of it. And that's a really good sign that these people want to be playing the game or derive some enjoyment from it. Yeah, so that's really important. And if I was to make another tier list for IA, there would be a class or a category just for like great storytellers. And I can tell you that most of the major alliances do not qualify as great storytellers. Rose is many things, but they're not a good storyteller. What's it called? Syndicate is a great storyteller, but they overdo it a few times. TKR is a terrible storyteller. Internally, they can probably sell things to their own people. Externally, I don't think I've ever met a single person that enjoys any of their stories. KT, surprisingly good storyteller. Their stories are kind of like hit or miss. Some people just won't read them, which is probably advisable. But they are interesting. Like, very often they're toxic as hell, but they're interesting. What's it called? UPN is a weird example because they don't tell stories. They don't give their people like a reason to log in. But other alliances don't like UPN. Other alliances will tell stories with UPN as a character. And so UPN is forced to participate. If Syndicate didn't hate UPN as much as they do, UPN would not exist. And there's a few cases like that, but they're a very obvious one. Would you consider that the current political situation in PNW is vastly different from 6 years ago? Or is it still more consolidated like it was back 6 years ago? 6 years is a long time. That's 2018. Well, yeah, no, so talking about TKR for just a minute longer. The problem with TKR's narratives is that TKR is the hero of its own story. And it views itself as the protagonist of politics and war. And this may seem strange today, but they were the protagonist of politics and war. So from 2017, I would say, or even 2016 to 2019, TKR was actually the bold, interesting alliance that wanted to change the game. Like, they were the ones that were saying like the current system is broken, and we need to mend divides, build bridges, and we need to change the political dynamic from bipolarity, which was extremely stagnant. You only had 2 coalitions in the game. There were basically no real reasons for war. And they wanted to change all of that. They wanted to create the multipolar system which we sort of exist in now. And they were very, very interesting. And people, even if they didn't like them, they sort of... they wanted them to succeed, you know? And that changed, I think, with... actually, I can't say that on YouTube. The AC Global War in 2018, the Salt War, the war against KT, and then Nightfall. TKR basically had a series of wars where they were shown to be complete hypocrites, and they undermined all of their accomplishments. And then it became very obvious to people what TKR stories were and how they worked. So TKR is the protagonist of all its stories. It is never the villain. It has never failed. It has never made a mistake. Any flaws that they might have are mere misconceptions. of which you don't know the full story. They are, in a word, pure hypocrites. And that is it's a terrible realization. Because as soon as you know that about them, you can never believe or even sort of listen to one of their stories again. It becomes so annoying. And you have alliances like Syndicate, which will tell a story almost identical to TKR's. But because they don't have that, because it's not so obvious, because people don't know them for hypocrisy, they know them for plenty of things. Hypocrisy is probably one of them, but they don't know them purely for hypocrisy. Then the Syndicate is not as disliked, and Syndicate can get away with stories that TKR cannot. So that's one really disappointing fact. So that's why I don't rank them as a great storyteller. Internally, though, there are very few storytellers that can compete, because they if you tell your members you are the righteous hero, they will believe it. And so they're good internally, but not externally. Would you consider that the current political situation is different 6 years ago? 2018 was a wildly different time, because you had... Actually, we'll pull up a map. Actually, do I have a map from 2018? I might somewhere. We're going to have to use the wiki. And the Great was... this video is going to get completely obliterated on YouTube. But okay, so this is 2018. I think this is what you mean by 6 years ago. Am I correct? You have to correct me if I'm wrong. So in 2018, you had... Is it 4 spheres? Yeah, you had 4 spheres. There was TKR sphere, Rose sphere, the Inquisition, and there was there were 2 smaller blocks, I guess, which is KT and Syndicate, which was neutral. So if you just sort of look at the treaty web now, if we go to top 40, Syndicate still has a major sphere. No one's really... these guys are kind of on the out. I'm gonna have to think for a second. Okay, so no. Number one, there's no alliance like the Inquisition. They were a very peculiar alliance that existed in that moment in time, right? There isn't going to be another alliance like them, with the same sort of relationships or even similar relationships with the rest of the game. At the same time, though, you also have the Syndicate at that moment in time when it was removed from the game. Syndicate wasn't really looking to rejoin politics, and it had quote-unquote won the game. It had a really weird mix of relationships with the other alliances. Event Horizon leaving, this is them skipping a war and then setting up for a new sphere in 3-6 months. TKR's position is also radically different from 2018. They do not have nearly as much power as they used to. And if you were to argue Eclipse, it was in TKR's position from 2018, that Eclipse is amassing all the large nations, all the City 50s, I don't think that really holds water either, because they just don't have enough. TKR in 2018 was... It was so powerful, you couldn't compare it now. You would have to have Rose or Grumpy sign Eclipse for there to be another Nightfall, used to have another situation like 2018. So I don't think it's comparable in that sense. But some people have recently told me that we're going back to sort of bipolarity. And people say that all the time, and they often do it to sort of spook you and to force people to fight wars that they don't really want to fight, or to trick alliances into making sacrifices which are much bigger than they should pay. But there are weird quirks to this. Eclipse and Singularity is really big. Alliances like Event Horizon, the Immortals, TKR, I could kind of see a lot of these alliances on the periphery at the moment, sort of banding together. And a rose sphere is really large now, really large. And I know this will probably change, and like people will split off, but it's very unusual. I think alliances are less adverse to bigger spheres than they were in the past, and that if you give it enough time without like a change in opinion, then the big alliances will go back to bipolarity. If the trend is towards that. So I don't know. That's one interesting view to compare to 2018. I also would kind of favor the idea that we're moving towards tripolarity. So I don't know how like the rest of the web will shake up, but I think if alliances did start to try to like band together for security, I think with the number of political actors in the game right now, you would have 3 spheres and not 2. Like we could see something like this, here, here, and here, right? It's rough, or even like Rose Syndicate, Singularity TKR, Event Horizon Eclipse, or whatever. You can have sort of those combinations. I don't think you would just split the game down the middle. I think there would be too many alliances with grievances, like intrasphere grievances in that situation. You would end up having like Eclipse, Event Horizon, TKR, and Singularity on one coalition. Or inversely, like TKR, Singularity, Fighting Pacifist, Syndicate. Or Rose, Immortals, Event Horizon, Eclipse, or whatever. You would have weird combinations. And you would have so many disagreements. I don't think it would last. I think you would have at least 3 spheres. I think 2 or 3 major alliances can get along, but 4 or 5 cannot. Yeah, so that's my opinion on that. 2018, not super relatable at this point. And the pessimists saying that we're going to go back to bipolarity or tripolarity, I'm not entirely bought into it yet. What about the doomers on the internal affairs side of it that say that only the big alliances are going to be here in like a year? I'm kind of this view. I made a video saying the end of politics and war. I was too pessimistic. I was way too pessimistic. The mergers have not brought the end of the game just yet. The smaller alliances are actually doing pretty well. And like stuff like BK's economic performance is a really good sign. But at the same time, it is actually kind of self-evident now, if you're in any of the political chats, that the big alliances are just like, wow. They are way more powerful. They can just ignore you. Like unironically, even Camelot at this point, I think we are humored in people like negotiating with us. I think if for example, what's a better example? If like the Immortals messages us, and the Immortals has a bad wall performance, they're probably one of the weakest to the mages right now. If they message us, that's a courtesy call. Like that is how vast the difference is at this point. And we're in like the top 10. So if you're in like the top 50, you're not even getting a courtesy call for some of these decisions. You're being informed. Yeah, and I don't think that'll improve. I think it'll get worse. Especially as recruitment changes. While I'm here, because this video was actually prompted by a subscriber's question. They asked, can you judge the competency of the top 50 and how each of them perform economically and on internal affairs? We did the economic side, but we had another question, which was from the news servers. Which news servers were doing well, which were not, how could they improve, and so forth. Yeah, it is saddening how disproportionate the balance power is. It is, but it's the nature of these games to some extent. But yeah, another subscriber question, which the video can tackle, is how the news servers are functioning. And that should also be interesting, because the news servers are kind of an expression of the game's activity. When they're really active and interesting, then you can tell that the game's doing fairly well. And when they're totally unmoderated and chaotic and everyone's super toxic or inversely that nothing is happening whatsoever, you can tell the game is doing very poorly. I have a document somewhere, which I will find. The rise of the news servers. So I wrote this back, it's 2020, maybe? Yeah, I think that's right. I wrote this back in 2020, which was a long time ago. But I think it remains still very accurate. So the reason the news servers were created was because the Politics and More official server collapsed. So the game relied on the forums, and then it switched to some extent to IRC, but primarily still the forums. And it went from the forums to a little bit of IRC and the forums, and then to Discord. And with Discord, then the quality of political conversation decreased. But most of it was still focused in the official Politics and More server, which was managed by... Is the bitrate 0? What is this? Okay, weird. Oh yeah, but everything moved to the Politics and More official server, which was moderated by like Guardian and Syndicate and Rose and people from UPN. It was a very diverse crowd. And most of the people that joined the server were new people asking questions and alliance leaders and active members that were sort of bragging about wars they had won and arguing over which alliances were best. And so it was an interesting chat. And there was no slow mode or anything like that. So people just talked. And I think there was about 1.3 million messages in the official server. But then came the great news server change. And this was in part prompted by me and a few other players who created a news server that was designed to be like rapid reporting. So if you had a forum account, then you would get a notification. But most people didn't check their email, so the notifications would come in very slow. And alliances at the time didn't have bots that would report when forum threads were posted. So people relied on these news servers that we'd created to get instant notification of game events. And it rapidly increased the speed at which the game was being played. So in the past, then on the forums, you would have like a forum post and then like 3 days would pass and then someone would respond to that. And you would have alliances and global wars come in late because they just didn't know that a war was happening. But when you had instant communication with other players and you had instant notification of events, then politics started moving very fast, especially in the lower tier. And so players started to drift towards the news servers because rather than like see a forum thread and then post randomly about it in the official server, you would see a notification on a Discord server and then you would just go right to that server's chat and reply and talk about it. And news servers were also good for keeping the chat flowing in that way because in the official server, like conversations would start and end and it was all rather disjointed. Whereas in the news servers, the topic was whatever recent event had happened. So there were all these advantages to news servers. But the disadvantage to news servers was that they were controlled by a player or an alliance, and this inevitably resulted in censorship and influencing. So people would like tweak the messages to bias to favor one alliance or the other. So people wanted the official server to be this sort of neutral ground, and that if it remained that, even if it didn't fulfill the other functions of the news servers, i.e. the instant communication, it would at least be reasonably unbiased. I will give you one guess what it failed to do. The official server is probably the most biased server in the game. That any of the news servers, even one you create right now, that just overtly favors your alliance, is less biased than the official server. The official server was basically staffed by one alliance. It was overtly controlled by Guardian. And then it became slightly more diversified with Rose and Syndicate and these other alliances having influence. But they purged huge chunks of the game. Like, you will not get into the official server's moderation team or development team or design team or anything like that if you're from, like, the bottom 50. You won't get in. It is an elite group for the top 10. And you can critique them to high heaven, but you will get no result. You can try for years to remedy even one part of that management team, and you will fail. Alex is great in many respects, but his team is a mess. So the news servers are actually really interesting now because they are the community. The official server is not. The official server is dead. It's gone. The chat is permanently slow-moded. It's over-moderated. And the moderation is also disproportionate. Like, they'll ban some things and not others based on not just political opinion, which is interesting because if you look at the political opinion of politics and war, you have, I think it's about 50-50 between sort of like conservatives and liberals, but it is not. There are really weird things in the official server. I'll just say that. Like, it doesn't neatly align to any sort of opinion. There are people in TKR which is a very progressive alliance, which would they were just shocked by the official server. And then there are people of the completely the other way that are also just completely shocked by the official server. It is in no manner consistent on the moderation side of that. But then you also have, like, alliance insults. Like, people will turn an alliance's name into a slur or combine it with a slur. And then that won't be banned on the official server, but the slur which it is combined with will be banned. So it's very interesting in how they moderate, but we'll put that in a box because whatever, creative liberty, right? They will ban political speech, like the game's politics, not real life politics. They will ban political speech about the game. If you favor certain alliances, or you, if you roll yourself with certain alliances or whatever, they will ban you over it. It's so ridiculous. And so people just don't talk there, right? Because they can't talk about real life politics there, which is, I think, reasonable, right? You shouldn't be discussing real life politics in that server, but they can't discuss that there. They can't discuss game politics there. They can't speak on behalf of their alliance. They can't trash talk other alliances. They can't recruit there anymore because the recruitment channel has been completely destroyed. It went from being sort of this big thread where people would sort of post every day because they wanted to be the first message people see, to a series of threads which no one reads. Because if you click on the thread, then it will take you to the last message in that thread and not the recruitment message at the top of the thread, which should be useful to new people. You can't go to the game help section because it's full of scammers. And you can't go to, what's it called? You can't go to most of the channels. Most of them are useless. So anyway, no one uses the official server anymore. They all move to the news servers. And the news servers are not overtly political, but they are affected by the politics of the game. So, how do we put it? You will have spheres consolidate or organize to manage news servers. So if you join Royal, you will find, or you used to find, that most of the reporters were from Centersphere, and most of the people participating in the discussion were from Centersphere. And while that may have changed over recent years, then you still have alliances like Singularity, which won't join Royal because it's so infested by their opponents. And you have alliances that won't engage with it at all, such as Rose, which views any of those sort of public chats as too toxic and kind of overtly political. And then you have rival news servers, where, like, if the enemy sphere controls a news server, you would create one to oppose it, or to give your members a place to visit. which is very, very common. And it's why you have so many of these things. And then you have businesses, players that create servers to be able to sell them. And those people that are purely profit driven could be among the people that would actually be most unbiased. But what ends up happening is they often will sell their influence, I guess, to larger alliances. So they will ban people based on like what they're paid by bigger alliances, which is crazy. And then you have stuff like OCN, which is really interesting because you have a huge proportion of their staff, which is OCN, for people that don't know much about it. They don't pay very well, and they don't pay very often. They like, you should be paid based on like how many like news reports you post or whatever. But very often they don't do that. So so what ends up happening is a lot of alliances will tell members to join them and to post there to get access to the staff channels. So that way when there's leaks or major game events or rumors or anything like that, then they have that information first so they can give it to their alliance. It is bad. The official server is corrupt and poorly run, and the news servers are corrupt and poorly run. And the next step moving forward, I would say, is that we're going to see these news servers continue to fracture and continue to decrease in activity. So the big news servers such as Royal, I think, you have people like Lysander in control now, and people like Fellini, and these are overtly political characters. These are diplomats. These are not like, we're not seeing Krampus in control. Krampus was many things, and he was to some extent a political actor, but he was primarily an economic one. He ran banks. He liked to deal with lots of different people because he wanted money. The people that advertised the most, or the people that bought influence in that server, were not always his friends. But I would argue that the people in control now, you couldn't bribe them. So in that sense, it's less corrupt, but it's more overtly political. So you have a different trade-off. Or it's a different type of corruption. And so I think what we're going to see is more rival servers end up being created for spheres. So you're going to have, for example, a Syndicate sphere server, a TKR sphere server, and so forth. I think Kev created the media recently, and he tried to bring all of them together to unite and rival Royal. And that was a good effort. I think that is one of the few more positive attempts. And I haven't seen anything sort of overtly biased in it yet. But I also know that when you create that sort of rivalry, you're creating a bipolarity in the media landscape, or a tripolarity if you count OCN. And how do I put it? It's probably an improvement, but it's not a solution. I think the main and official server needs to be fixed. They need to adopt some of the characteristics of the news servers, i.e. reporting major events or allowing people to discuss recent events. I would say they need to ban like all discussion of real life politics, universally, and they need to bring back the emphasis on helping people. That was a huge like feature of the official server, and they need to stop people from just messaging new players as soon as they join the server. Because, for example, you're a new player and you join the official server right now, you will get messaged by everyone in the top 10 to leave that server, join a new server, and to join their alliance. They're just being driven right out of that server the minute they get in, and that's reasonable right now, but it shouldn't be encouraged. So I have checked out Diplomacy and Strife. It's a new game, or kind of new. They had a reset, so the alliances and players are somewhat new. My opinion on it is that actually I can't really show Diplomacy and Strife. without like logging in and logging in and becoming a mess. So Diplomacy and Strife is a Cybernations clone and a Politics and War clone. So the leader, oh, not the leader, the developer is an active Politics and War player in Grumpy, and prior to that, he came from Cybernations. And so there's weird things like technology, which you can tell were definitely inspired by Cybernations, and there's some other features which are more reminiscent of Politics and War. I think the Alliance Bank system is very similar to Politics and War. So Diplomacy and Strife has potential. It could be a very interesting game, and I've heard from some people that like the game hasn't been solved. Like you could find new ways to succeed in it. And the politics there isn't super like ironed out. Like we don't have a winner yet. So there could be some very interesting wars, some cool stories. My concern is that the game is kind of ugly. Like it's a bit weird to play. And then we haven't really seen any wars or any of those stories yet. So it has potential, but that's all it has. And another concern is that the developer will be influenced in PNW because like he's an active Politics and War player. So if Hate B nukes him for like 30 weeks straight, will he give them advantages in DNS to get them to stop? It's a question, and I don't know if it's even against the Politics and War's rules. It might be, but regardless, like it's a big question. I haven't seen any evidence of it yet. I haven't heard anyone talking about it, and he seems to be fairly reasonable. Like I joined the game briefly, and he didn't immediately go like, "I banned me," banned or reduce my revenue on my RNG. So yeah, he seems fine. The game has potential. A big problem with games in the genre overall is that advertising is not great. It's very hard to get people to stick around. Retention is very low. And like they're trying more creative ways to advertise, but I don't see them making a huge return on investment, especially DNS, which looks worse than Politics and War. Like if you're a new player, if you're Gen Z or a millennial, there's no reason to play any game in this genre because it looks like it's from the 1990s. And like that's not wrong. Damn, my voice is gone. But yeah, these games look like they're not from the 1990s. And I mean, I would play, what's it called, that other game? At War, Supremacy 1914, Victoria 3. I mean, a large section of this game like plays the, what's it called, Paradox games. It would only take a small studio, like one small studio, to create an MMO in this space with a few of the features we have and just completely destroy this game. There are games like that Kingdom one on mobile, and like some others like it, which have alliance banks. They have alliances. They even call them that. They have wars between them, and they have beautiful graphics, and they can be run on potatoes. Like it's a matter of time until Politics and War fades, and development on the game is extremely expensive. So yeah, I'm not optimistic towards DNS because I think it came in too late. I think if it came out 4 years ago, I think DNS might have actually killed Politics and War. Because at that time you had almost 50% of the Politics and War player base quit the game. And then you had Drew's Invasion. But what's important to note about Drew's Invasion is that he played nation states, he played Politics and War, and he played a bunch of games like that. So if DNS had come out in 2020, there's a good chance he would have tried it. and there's a good chance it would have killed politics and war. It's very unfortunate. I think Nations at Risk and what's it called? There was another game that Rose supported. Both of them had way better odds to kill politics and war than DNS did, or DNS does. That's my view on it. I could be open to changing it. Yeah, that's the current state. Any other questions? I gotta train my voice a bit to last for an hour. Or 2 hours, technically. Because the other stream failed. Oh, no, it's 3. What the This has lasted for 2 hours. Crazy. Is it realistic how disproportionate the balance of power is? That is a good question. Yes and no. Yes and no. The game has lasted a very long time, and that is in part like why things are so disproportionate. And like the recent changes to help new people are good, right? Like people are catching up now, which is nice. But these catch-up mechanics, I think, were introduced too late. For example, when the urban planning projects were released, I think that was the turning point. If those were cheap, it would be fine. But they weren't cheap. They were really expensive. And I think that destroyed it. I think that destroyed the game. Because the big alliances exploded in size and strength, and the rest of the game died. Actually, right now, one of the biggest changes you could make that would positively impact the game is revealing alliance banks. So just telling people what the big alliances have. No one will do it, but it's a great idea. Even if you did it for one day, if you just gave everyone one day with perfect information, that would dramatically affect the game's politics for the better. Because smaller alliances would realize. They would realize how far behind they are. And then they would start working together more. And then that would help grow everyone. But because they don't know how bad the situation is, then they don't care. There's the argument, though, and this is an argument from even middling alliances, which is weird, which is that the game shouldn't really have catch-up mechanics, right? That the game has lasted since 2014. Some players will be at like the top of the ladder, some won't, and that you shouldn't allow newer people to catch up to them. Instead, new people should be confined to the lower tier and should be playing and enjoying that tier. It's an argument. I sort of disagree with it, but I understand it. And for a lot of people, and for a lot of players, like if you're a new player coming into the game, I would probably say don't try and be a whale. Don't try and hit City 50. It will take you a decade. It'll be very difficult. By the time you get there, the whales will be at City 100. You should enjoy your time in the game. Be at City 10, fight wars at City 20. Yeah. If, what's it called? If everyone wasn't so obsessed with growth right now, Camelot would probably be doing that. We'd be fighting at City 30 against other City 30 alliances. We wouldn't be trying to hit City 50. We would just be enjoying our time. That's what we did at City 20. And I think that's what like Samurai and like ARG and stuff do. It's a great mentality. It's what KT used to do before they became farmers. Yeah. There needs to be an attitude change in one direction or another. I'm gonna check any recent political developments. The news and the micro news. Event Horizon has left sale. TI has left house. I know a little bit about these things. Can I disclose them? I think there's reasonable expectation at this point that there is going to be a war in August. And why does that keep appearing? It keeps telling me that, like, the stream is failing. But when I check, it doesn't tell me that. The audio stream. Okay, can you hear me? Actually, can I hear me? I'm gonna check. If I can, that's fine. I can, this is ridiculous. Whatever. Sorry. Oh, yeah, so I think there's reasonable expectation that there's going to be a war in August between, I don't know, Syndicate and someone, because there's been a lot of memes posted about that on the OWF and elsewhere. And what's strange about these globals that come off the back of non-aggression packs is that people can sort of advertise that they're going to fight wars because, because of the NAP, then people like can't preempt. And spies will figure out wars well in advance. So in theory, say there's a war in August, say it ends in September, the moment the non-aggression pact is signed, two alliances could just point at each other and just say, we're going to fight in 6 months. We're going to fight the moment the NAP ends. And for that next 6 months, you could just have a lead up to that war. You would have like all the drama, all the leaks, all the disputes. They would all be in the context of in 6 months they're going to fight. So it would be very entertaining. No one does that, but they do something similar like a month out, where they'll call the shot, or they'll hint at it. I mean, the whelp could just be chilling and waiting for this to start, or it could be that whelp is going to be the one to do it. You don't know. It could be TKR's going to do it. That'd be a wild story. So we can predict with reasonable accuracy that Syndicate is probably going to be fighting. We can predict with reasonable certainty something like Rose is probably going to be fighting. And we can predict with reasonable certainty that TKR is probably not going to be fighting. Purely because Syndicate fought in January, and Rose fought last year, and the other spheres, I think, fought more recently. I think Whelp and TKR fought a month or two ago, and Singularity is tied to Eclipse, so we don't know if they're gonna... Like, it just makes that complicated. So... Oh, Whelp. Sorry, well, we can't help what alliances name themselves. Or blocks, for that matter. Most blocks have dumb names. Yeah, so next month will be interesting. Event Horizon canceling Syndicate right now, that to me speaks of like cowardice. I don't like that move from them. If I were in their shoes, I would have stuck by Syndicate on this one. It could be I'm wrong. It could be there's no risk to them, and that the memes are just memes. Or it could be the memes that throw people off, and the target is someone completely different. Or it could be that like Syndicate's gonna like attack another alliance, and then the memes are sort of about that. So yeah, who knows? Point is, if Syndicate's gonna fight next war, then I don't like Event Horizon's move because it's kind of cowardly, and especially as they're going paperless. Like, they're not even signing another sphere. Because if, for example, Event Horizon canceled Syndicate this month and then signed Pentaforce or whatever, then Pentaforce like can't attack Syndicate, and Event Horizon wouldn't. So, like by remaining paperless, they're kind of just saying, "Peace, we're out," and they're not removing any pieces from the board, so they're not helping Syndicate on their way out. The Immortals is interesting because they left House and they kicked half of their government. Very spicy. Probably lots of drama involved there. I love the move because I didn't like half their government, or particularly like 25% of their government. So I think this is a great move. I like the new direction. I think they have a lot of potential. I think signing TFP is also, it harkens back to their past, like with Oasis and, well, I mean, some success they had back then. And TFP, I think, is also kind of war adverse to an extent. So they're complementary in their playstyle and their strategies, perhaps. Yeah, so I like that move. Oh, weird. Why is that low? Okay, I gotta check this. Fun. It's so strange that like the stream has issues because it should be fine. It should be consistent. It's still saying it's fine. Like that it has like whatever number of minimum kilobits. I'm gonna keep talking under the presumption that it's fine. So, what was I thinking? Yeah, I like the move from the Immortals. Some people are saying, though, that it was caused by the recent war performance. That they performed really badly, and so they were either kicked from the block, or they left in disgrace, or that they wanted to move because they felt that like TKR was losing too many wars, and they needed somewhere safer so they could have a better performance next time. I don't know what is accurate. At least nothing that I can disclose. However, either way, it's not great. Like it's a bad setup for them. Yeah, so we'll have to see how they do. I guess I don't really have an opinion. It's kind of weird. Like I like the move, but even I would agree it's because something bad happened. Is there any other big moves? Oh, there's Rose signing most of Pentaforce, and then there's TFP and Singularity canceling. So Singularity cancelled TFP, or vice versa, or they downgraded their treaty to an ODOP, which, like, to me doesn't strike me as a super strong treaty. I mean, they're allies, but they didn't really tell me much, so we'll see what TFP does together. It's cool though, I guess, because like we're seeing more spheres come into being. And you have ties between spheres, which means the politics is more complex. So that's good. Rose and Pentaforce, though, is just weird. I haven't really got an explanation for that. I figure it will be very temporary, because when you sign that many treaties, you're either building a hegemony, or they're all temporary. To me, that strikes as being mostly temporary. And how do I put it? These are alliances, some of them less competent alliances, that wouldn't traditionally sign Rose, and that Rose wouldn't traditionally sign. With the exception, I guess, of BK, which I thought was terrible, but apparently isn't. Apparently their growth is actually really good. So maybe that'll be like the one remnant of Pentaforce that remains allied to Rose after the rest sort of inevitably get cancelled. There are some alliances on the periphery, though, which I find really strange. So, like, for example, the Lost Mines. That is an alliance that will almost inevitably cancel TKR. Or, sorry, be cancelled by TKR. And they could look to create a sphere again with World Task Force. And same with like a lot of Pentaforce. Like UPN, I don't think will be able to get into another sphere that easily. So I could kind of see them trying to work with TI or like creating sort of a third sphere. Oh, sorry, another sphere. And yeah, those alliances are just kind of in the lurch right now. I think we'll see things from them in 3 to 6 months. But for now, they're just kind of on the edge. Yeah, so it's weird. I think it's also partly why like no one's talking about these recent developments. Like no one's talking about EVH's move. No one's talking about Rose or Singularity or anything else because there's always the expectation that this is temporary and that these spheres are either for a purpose or to defend from something, and that they'll like reorganize later into more natural groupings, or that they're not complete, which I guess also makes way more sense. That for example, Rose Sphere might be dissolving and then reorganizing with some people from Penta and some people from their current sphere, and that what's it called? We'll see the same with Whelp. I think LOD is probably leaving Whelp. I've heard that for like 8 months now, so that could be totally false. But we'll see how it goes. Syndicate, their sphere is notoriously weak right now. It's probably the weakest sphere they've had in almost a year, maybe 2 years. So, yeah, I could see them trying to find something else. Ugh. Actually, I guess we're in that category. We're in the middle too. Sorry, not the middle. We're on the outside. Sup, Claren. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or any thoughts, let me know. If not, I'll probably cancel the stream at some point. We discussed lots of different topics. Oh, my voice has died. Is there anything else that people have said? People are joking about AK. Weird. There was discussion of people like trying to create a tier list based on just raw competency across the board. I think at that point you're just going into a sort of a normal tier list. Like it's so vague. It's a long stream, my friend. And it starts kind of abruptly. So I don't think we'll be hearing any questions from him anytime soon. Oh, while I'm live, I guess I can give you guys previews. So I'm creating a video right now based on like how easy it is to play the game without an alliance. I'm not tiering Milcom, no, that's no, heinous. You can do it with statistics using what's it called? The War Stats pages, CT owned and Locutus. But when you start ranking alliance milcoms, you very rapidly enter the territory of like propaganda, where it is mostly propaganda. Like for example, I guess Sword Coast, their stats are average. They're a little bit above average, maybe. But the propaganda is so fierce that if you rank them C tier or whatever, they would explode. Their allies would self-combust. Whereas if you have like Singularity, which I would argue is one of the best Milcom alliances in the game right now, if you put them in S tier or whatever, then people will come in and say Tearing did that, or they had like a few good moments, like a few good wars. They got lucky, and because they're newer, you can't really say, you can't refute that entirely. It's difficult to refute. And you also end up judging alliances like, say, TKR more harshly than is probably deserved, because their war performance over the past 2 years is atrocious. I would argue they are one of the worst military alliances in the game at the moment. But the reason I have that perception is because they've lost 4 wars back to back. They're really bad diplomats. I don't know how that reflects on their military capabilities. And also, because they've existed for so long, since like 2015 or whatever, then I can think back to wars where they performed really well and wars where they performed really badly. And so when I'm looking at them, I tend to average it out. Whereas if I'm looking at Singularity, I'm seeing Singularities win. I'm not looking back at the alliance they emerged from and going, well, Cataclysm didn't do so hard in that last war. So there's recency bias. So yeah, Milcom is really hard to judge. That said, you can, at a glance, usually tell which alliances are more or less competent in Milcom. So you can probably separate the alliances into 3 categories of the best, the worst, and everyone else. And everyone else can switch between being decent and being bad from war to war. Sometimes they have good Milcom staff, sometimes they do not. Sometimes they have a war chest, sometimes they do not. And so forth. Sometimes members are active, sometimes they're not. There are alliances, I don't know if Singularity is one of them actually, but there are alliances where they favor their time zone. And so when they're on the offensive, they can do quite well. And when they're not, they do very poorly. The recent changes, like they've changed day change from midday to any time of the day, that struck me as a good change. But as it's gone on, I think I've changed my opinion on it. So, how do I put it? People are now counter blitzing and stuff like 2 hours after day change. And that sucks for like a lot of the world. There's a lot of like up and coming alliances, I would say. They have like a majority of their player base is like Indian or Pakistani or French. And those players hate this time zone. They hate when wars are fought. And if they were able to, I guess, break from the rest of their coalition and declare whenever they wanted or fight 1v1s, they would do exceptionally well. But because they're locked into this current system, they're going to consistently perform poorly. And you can't really change that. Like, it doesn't matter if they learn all the game mechanics. It doesn't matter if they log in every day to fight their wars or to launch their airstrikes. Because if that first 36 hours is really bad, that first 2 hours particularly is really bad, like the war could be over, and it just doesn't matter. So, yeah, I don't know. It's iffy. Oh, actually, this is another fact of like global wars becoming more common. So, in global wars, you're fighting for slots. And so when you're fighting for their best and most desirable slots, the slots of people with high infra and low units, or the time to really perform well in the war is in that first 2 hours, that initial blitz. And if you don't perform well on that, your treaty prospects post-war are probably going to be pretty bad. So, yeah, so there are alliances which are more attrition fighters, but aren't blitz alliances, I guess, which which are punished by the current system. A way to fix this is actually by slowing wars down. So if you halved casualties, so like when you airstrike or whatever, instead of destroying 300 planes, you destroyed 150 planes, you would double the length of the war, like in terms of like how long the war is really fought, how long it takes to destroy units, and you would then make it more possible for those small alliances to succeed. Yeah, that's another thing. Every alliance will have high opinion of its own milcom, because they don't really see things from like other alliances. Though you can also overvalue milcom. So like people have the perception that Oblivion, for example, is unassailably good. Right? They are like a fantastic military alliance. I've worked with Oblivion many a time now. Oblivion's milcom is kind of a meme in compared to like Singularities, for instance. Like Singularity will pull out all these like Google Sheets, and they'll be tracking all these wars, and they'll be running the math on all their maps and calculating which attack is the most efficient to destroy the most units. They'll even be calculating like there's a bot called Autolycus, which I think was developed by Church of Adam, which will calculate what is the most profitable attack, where you destroy the most of the enemy's units in terms of like monetary value and lose the least. And Oblivion will be sitting over there, just be like, ha, airstrike go burr. And it's real. They don't do any planning. Like, really bare bones. They basically log in, see wars were declared, and launch them back. Or they get the notification on their phone, enter Discord and say, hey guys, I think someone's attacking me. And someone would check in game and declare. Like, they don't have notifications, they don't have all these fancy bots. Dude was the one that was coming out with all these statistics. He was the one that was trying to push that. But the rest of them really weren't trying. There are alliances like Goon Squad, Goon Squad is basically Oblivion. Like, that's where they descended from. They don't use any tech. One of their team, is a game developer now. He's a community developer. He's designed so many cool tools. I would bet you, like, a significant number of resources in this game, that one of Politics and War's developers has done nothing for his own alliance's milcom. Like, nothing. BK famously, like BK was when it was really powerful, when it was one of the top 3 alliances in the game, when it had one of the top 5 militaries in the game, arguably number 1 at some points. Their milcom was done on a Google Sheet, but by hand. By hand, in the sense that they would copy paste the names of nations from the alliances page. From the alliances page. No scripts, no updating unit count. Oh no, they would update unit counts, but they would do it by hand. Which means that when you destroy like 500 of your aircraft, they would edit that onto the sheet. That's what their staff would do. This was at the same time, contextually, this was at the same time that TKR had designed a Google script, right, that would find targets for you. Like, you would input your nation ID and then it would give you targets. I have a copy of it. I could pull it up, actually, if I know where it is. It's the target generator. Damn, I can't find it. Point is, there was, yeah, they had this amazing script, and BK, like, Yoso, the leader of BK, designed a whole, like, web UI system, right? Like, they had a whole website that was more advanced than Politics and War in some sense. I would argue it probably had more lines of code than Politics and War. And you could, like, assign nations to enemy, you could assign your nations to enemy nations to, like, hit them, and then it would automatically send out messages to those people telling them to declare war and who to spy and all these other things. Things that Locutus does now, but they were completely foreign to people back then. BK had all this tech, but it didn't use any of it. They just did manual stuff. Like, it's how absurd Oblivion is. It's how absurd some of these really high-performing military alliances are. Like KT, I believe, still doesn't really use war rooms. A lot of them use DMs or group chats. And there's an argument to be made that group chats are better because you get a notification and you actually listen to it, whereas people mute alliance servers. That's why people also have war servers, so that you're not meant to mute those. You're meant to get those notifications. People don't do that, by the way. People just mute the war server too. But yeah, that's the purpose of it. A lot of the high-performing military alliances are some of the least technologically capable, or they just don't care for technology. KT was weird in that they would teach you game mechanics, like really niche mechanics. So you would know, for instance, the exact right amount of aircraft to use in certain situations. Like, for a good example is, say you're fighting an opponent with 1,000 aircraft and you have 1,500. Do you airstrike them with 1,500 aircraft and get a superiority or whatever? They would argue, if you're already winning the war, not to do that. They would say lower your aircraft to like 750, lower than theirs, and then select like airstrike aircraft. And you would destroy the same number, roughly, of aircraft as you would using 1,500, but you wouldn't lower their resistance at all. Which means that you could spam those attacks infinitely with never winning the war. And never win the war. I.e. never give them a moment of peace. So there were like quirky mechanics like that, which they would teach, which no other alliance would use. No other alliance would care for it. And they would teach you those things, and most of their alliance never used them. They would write them into Google Forms, they would answer them on the quiz, they would never do them. So, which was really weird, right? Because other alliances would look at KT and go, wow, those guys have so many cool tricks and like mechanics, and they would copy KT's guides, but then they would never use it. No one would do it. This is a great example too. So Camelot, when we did our war guides and stuff, I think my original guide was like a page long. And I stand by it that you can teach any player in this game to fight a war with only 3 instructions. That if you can micromanage them with 3 instructions. Airstrike aircraft, and then you give them a target link. Spy nation or whatever, give them a target link. And what's it called? Beige enemy nation, or like do not beige or whatever. There was something like that. But you could do it with like 3 instructions. And that's it. That's all you needed to teach them. And you can still use a variant of that, right? Where you airstrike aircraft until they're below this point and then ground attack or whatever. It's very simple to teach how to fight in this game because it's not that complicated. It's advanced paper, scissors, rock, and paper sucks. But yeah. So you would end up having these really simple mechanics, and then you'd have some simple war guides, and then you would have 40-page war guides with quizzes. The people with 40-page war guides, like KT, would say we are the best fighters in the game. And I'm not going to argue with them. Their members know many more things than ours do. But ultimately, when it comes down to who's winning the war at the time, it is most of the time just the person who logs in more. You know, I think what separates the best player in the game and the worst player in the game is merely activity. If you log in every day and you spam ground attacks, and your opponent logs in once every 2 days and launches an airstrike, I think the person running ground attacks will probably win. So, yeah, I don't know how to judge military competency. Not really. I don't think anyone does. In fact, the alliances that perform the best militarily, I would bet, are the alliances with the highest proportion of Americans and the simplest instructions and the best stories. So effectively, the people that have the easiest time zone, that can log in most often, and that understand in a sentence what they need to do. So if you're like a 10 member 10 city alliance, you can be the most competent alliance in this game in 10 minutes. If you can only fulfill those functions. Or fulfill whatever. If you can only do that. What else is worth mentioning? Oh, planning is overrated. This is another weird quirk of military competency. When Camelot was perceived to be at its height in terms of military competency, like when we were performing our most amazing blitzes and so forth, we had no blitz sheets. So we would make them, but like our allies would come to us like 2 hours before the war was beginning and say, we're fighting a war now. And we wouldn't be told. Like we wouldn't have militarized in a lot of cases. We wouldn't have had time to prepare our war chest. We wouldn't have told our members. And so we would just send out a ping like 2 hours before saying, hey guys, be online at day change, probably fighting. And some people would show up, some people wouldn't. And we were trying to rush out a blitz sheet, but they would be incomplete. And so, and like other alliances would be taking targets as well, because we wouldn't be told. Like we would be told the war was starting at day change. But we wouldn't be added to coalition sheets because people didn't like us. So they would just say, we're fighting a day change, and you show up. And we'd show up, and we would pick an alliance to try and focus, and then that would get thrown out because other alliances would want to take slots. And so we would just tell members, here's a link. Like, filter who's in a war. Or before you could filter based on who was in a war, you had to just go down the list and just pick and hope that that nation had open war slots. And if you were hitting very often, then the war slots would be full. So you just have to keep checking and try to remember the names of the people you'd already checked. So it was very chaotic. And somehow we still like performed better than alliances, like Rose, that would have blitz sheets and they would be organizing the coalition. And so they would already know like who everyone was fighting. They would have first pick and they would still perform worse. So it's hard to judge. Blitz sheets are useful. It's good to have a plan, I guess. But plans are not necessary. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it is actually generally better because people won't show up. And in that sense, it's better to have 3 people or 2 people on a nation, guaranteed like that nation loses. Versus having like 30% of your people show up for a blitz and there only being one nation on an enemy and that enemy beating them. Which can happen. So yeah, it's 50-50. A lot of wars don't require a lot of tech. Pirates will argue that too. Pirates will argue that bots are very good at serving up targets, but that manually checking targets is way more effective. So wars last for like 2 days, right? So if you take an hour, or not even an hour, 30 minutes to search through targets manually yourself and sort and organize and sort of guess at which alliances or which nations will be rich, you will probably outperform a recruitment bot that can do it in 2 minutes. And people will still say, well, the recruitment bot is way better because the recruitment bot will get you closer and in 2 minutes. But the wars still last 2 days. Like, you can't change how long the wars last. So there's no point in doing it quicker, right? It is actually better to do it manually. But at the same time, Manually is hard. Manually requires game knowledge. You know, most people don't want to do it manually. uh, the maximum damage comes from 10% of members who are most active in the war. Back in Global War 30, the top 10 in Nemesis did the majority of the 12 billion damages. Yes, I've covered that in videos before. 10% of the Alliance does, about 50% of the damage. Or more. That's crazy. That's across the game, and irrespective of the size of the Alliance, because you're doing it by percentage. So if you had an Alliance of 3 people, or whatever, then that one person would still do 50%. The maximum damage comes from... The thing is, you're really looking at the most hyperactive members. Those are the members that log in the most. Those are not your most knowledgeable members. Your oldest members, your Gov members, tend to actually perform worse in wars because they will be busy with other things. So Gov will be active helping members, and older players with high game knowledge are probably like older people. So they have work and college and stuff. And the best performing people are probably like kids, honestly, or like really lazy college students, people that have a lot of free time on their hands. Hashtag too lazy to log in for wars. Yeah. I mean, I don't do so well in wars anymore. It's in part because I choose like very hard targets, because, how do I put it? If you want an enemy nation, like a competent opponent, to be taken down, then you don't want to hand that to someone in the Alliance who is kind of a big question mark on whether they'll succeed or not. Like maybe they'll accidentally beige or whatever. You want to give that to someone that you know won't make that mistake, even if their performance overall is slightly worse. And so I'll give myself harder targets. Or I'll get focused more because people presume I'll be more active than I am. Which is fine. But it's interesting. Gov get targeted across the board. The only person that I've found that not to be true for is TKR, strangely enough. I don't know why it is, but the few times that I've been an opponent of theirs, or that I've seen chats, like from wars in which they're in, their Gov is like targeted last. I don't understand it. I think it's partly like friendly fire etiquette, I guess. Like the idea is that you don't want to attack the generals because you want them to succeed, I guess. You don't want to annoy them. It's so counterproductive and weird. But I remember it even back in IQ. And like there was no set of alliances that liked TKR less than IQ at the time. And I remember they didn't slot the 3 highest ranking people of TKR. They blitzed everyone else in the Alliance. There was no other open slots in the Alliance. And I remember us being told, no, you're not to attack them. It was so weird. And it could also be respect, in the sense that they presume these people will perform well, and so they want to deal with everyone else and then get to them, I guess. It's weird. There's weird, quirky shit happening there. But you don't see it with any other alliance. You see the Gov get head first in other alliances. I'm roasting a huge chunk of the game. A huge chunk of the game is lazy college students. Another chunk of the game is lawyers, and another chunk is soldiers. If you were to divide the game in 3, that'd probably be it. Ugh. A harder target makes me more active purely because I like challenges. Yeah. Wars are good times to test yourself. I'm trying to stay awake. as well as regain my voice a bit, which I think is working. Maybe. I don't know. I think the game needs to do more to police that. I think there's a lot of people that this is dubious. This is dubious. They make a lot of messes in the community, and they probably shouldn't be playing it. Um, I try and say that in my videos. Like, if you're what's it called? I would say even if you're 20, I would say don't participate in voice chats or anything because you're dealing with like 40-year-olds, and even the college students. I would say like don't like you manage your engagement with them because it's unusual. Um, the average age is like 20, and that's consistent across all of the surveys the game has done, and that could be in part because of who responds to surveys, but I don't think it is. I think it's because the game was designed in the 1990s. Is that not working? Stream health errors. Not good. Yeah, exactly. So most of them are 18 to 25. Um, I, I don't know what the proportion is. I do know that most of the game is older, and then you sort of have to, I think, reasonably caution the player base. I think the game is kind of weird, to be honest. One thing I find really annoying, actually, is that so we're an alliance that's focused entirely on the game, so we don't discuss real life, and I think that's a really good approach for most alliances because it's